The Chitrik Academy is dedicated in loving memory of Rabbi Tzvi Hirsh Chitrik.
Welcome to today's lesson. Today we are going to learn Umidamas Nissen from over here until Mafkir over here. So let's make a dot on the side here and over here. In our previous lesson, Abai explained that our Mishnah is discussing two cases. One is if a person tripped and his jug fell on the floor. So the question is, if someone trips, are they considered Pesheya? Were they supposed to look where they're going? Are they going to be responsible or not? Rameir says yes, a person is responsible, must look where he's going. However, Rabbi Yehuda says no, a person will not be responsible, because a person does not need to look where he's going. This is the first case of the Mishnah according to Abaya. The second argument in the Mishnah according to Abaya is if something fell on the floor, if a person's jug fell on the floor, and then the owner says, I'm making it hefker, I do not want to be responsible for it anymore. Rameir will say a person is going to be responsible for it, and Rabbi Yehuda will say a person will not be responsible for this item. This is Abayi's opinion, how he explains the Mishnah. Now let us continue the Gemara to see what the Gemara is going to say. Umidamas Nissen. So Gemara asks, we're starting off with a question, so let's make a question mark. Umidamas Nissen betarte, the same way Abaya explained that our Mishnah has two cases in it, Braisa nami betarte. The Braisa, which we mentioned in the previous lessons, also should be speaking about two cases. Let's see the Braisa. The Braisa we had mentioned starts Vahatanya over here, and it said, Nishbra kadai v'lei salkai, if a person's jug, kad is a jug, broke, and he did not clean it up, he did not take it away. Nafal gamlai, or if his camel fell on the floor, lo yamida, he did not lift his camel up. So we said there's a machlokes between Rameir and the Chachamim. Let's see this on the board. This was the case of the Braisa. Case number one, that if a person's jug or kelim fell on the floor and the person didn't lift it, or if his camel sat down and he did not lift up his camel, so the Rameir will say the person is chayiv, and the Chacham will say the person is pater. He doesn't need to pay, but he's chayiv midinei shamayim. That is what we had mentioned in the Braisa. So the Gemara is asking, the same way Abai explained that our Mishnah is speaking about two cases because the Mishnah brings two examples, same thing over here, it should also be referring to these two similar cases. Let's see the Gemara. Let us continue. So, Gemara asked that the Braisa should also be referring to two cases. The Gemara continues. In the case of the jug that fell and cracked on the floor, it makes sense that you could explain it in two cases. Oy bishnas nefila, either during as it was falling, the person will be responsible. That's machlokes, whether a person needs to watch where they're going or not. Oy la'achar nefila, or after it fell on the floor, if the person makes it hefker, the same way in our Mishnah we had two cases, so we can explain it for kad as well. You see, the case of that Abaya spoke about was also speaking about a case of a kad. So it makes sense how it could fit both ways. Either is he responsible for tripping, or once it fell down, does a person need to clean it up? So the case of the kad makes sense, is understood. However, let's see if the case of the camel, we could also fit in these two ways that Abai explained the Mishnah. Ela gmalai, but his camel, bishlema la'ach nefila mashkachasla. So in the case that after it fell down on the floor, I understand. B'mafkir nevelasai, in a case where the camel fell on the floor and died, that I understand that we have the same machlokes, like Abai mentioned, whether once it's on the floor, can a person make it hefker or not? So if the camel fell on the floor and died, we'll have the same machlokes between Rameir and Rabbi Yehuda, whether the person will be responsible or not. So achar nefila, we could apply it to the case of the camel as well. However, Ella b'shas nefila, but in the case of while it's falling down, hech mashkachas la, how can you find this machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda? This is the Gemara's question. Let's explain the question. In the case of Kodim Nefila, in Abaya's case, the question is, the machlokes is whether niskal pesheya, if a person trips, is he considered negligent? Does a person need to watch where he is going? So the Meir will say yes, a person will be responsible because the person needs to watch where they are going. And Rabbi Yehuda will say that no, a person does not need to watch where they are going. Okay, so that's when a person is walking. But what about the camel? A person needs to watch where he's going, but is he responsible that his camel did not look where he was going and tripped? No one will hold that a person will be responsible in such a case. Because how is a person supposed to watch make sure that his camel is watching where it's going? So this is the Gemara's question. How does B'shas Nefila fit, according to Abaye, in the case of a camel? This is the Gemara's question. So Rabbi Acha now is going to come and answer this question. So let's make an A over here. Omer Rav Acha said, it is possible. Kigoin, de'abra b'maya, he passed his camel through water. Derech sherata denara, it's a path which was overflowed with water. This is Rav Acha's answer. And the answer is as follows. Here. Our question was, how is a person supposed to make sure that his camel is watching where it's walking, and therefore it shouldn't trip? So Rav Acha is answering, a person can't make sure that his animal is watching where it's walking, but the person has to be careful where he leads his animal. For example, in this case, Rav Acha says, let's write down Rav Acha over here. Rav Acha says, a person needs to make sure he doesn't bring his animal in a place where it's dangerous, where it can trip. For example, in a path where there was a river nearby, and the river overflowed onto the path, and the camel came and slipped on the water and fell down. Then the question is, B'shas Nefila, is this because this person caused his animal to trip, because he brought it to a dangerous, slippery area? Will this person be responsible or not? And then we have the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir will say the person is responsible, and Rabbi Yehuda will say the owner is not responsible. So again, the way this answers the question is because the question was, how is a person supposed to make sure that his animal is watching where it's walking in order that it shouldn't trip? And the answer is, we're not discussing a case where a person needs to watch to make sure his animal is watching where it's walking. We're discussing a case where the person is leading the animal into a dangerous area. So the person is supposed to watch where he is leading his animal. That is the Gemara's answer, Rabbi Acha's answer. Now the Gemara is going to ask on Rabbi Acha's answer. The Gemara is going to ask a question. Let's put a question mark. Heichi dami. How is Rabbi Acha's case referring to? What type of case is it referring to? Ika darka achrina. If there is another path that the person can take his camel on. For example, there's another path which would go around where the water is and not take the animal in a dangerous area. So then, paisheyahu, the owner is a paisheya. He is responsible because he's being negligent. Because the owner brings his camel to a dangerous area, for sure he will be responsible if the animal trips. Even Rabbi Yehuda will say that the owner will be responsible. No one argues in this case. So this cannot be the case that Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir will argue, because in a case where there is another path, everyone would agree, even Rabbi Yehuda, that the owner will be responsible. So this cannot be the case that there is another path that goes around. And if there is no other path, anasu, the person is Ainas, he was forced to go through this way, and he didn't have a choice. If this path did not exist, there was only one path to go through, then the owner won't be responsible. Even a mayor will say the owner is not responsible because he needed to take his camel this way because he had no choice. So this case, Rabbi Acha's case, cannot be the case that our Brisa would discuss where Rameir and Rabbi Yehuda will have the machoikas. Because if there is another path, then Rabbi Yehuda will agree that the owner is responsible. And if there is no other path, Rameir would agree that the owner is not responsible. So what is the case of the camel? How can a person be responsible to watch where his camel is going and therefore would be responsible? Let's see the Gemara's answer. So the Gemara answers from over here, Ella mashkachasla. We can find this case for the camel, where there will be a machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. In a case, the iskil, that the person who owns the camel tripped, viskila bei gamla, and his camel tripped over him. In a case where the person who owns the camel tripped on the ground, and then his camel tripped over him, in this case we will come back to machlokes of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because Rabbi Meir will say, let's put it over here, Rabbi Meir will say the person will be responsible because the person, the owner, should have been watching where he was going. And therefore, if someone trips on his camel afterwards, if his camel tripped over him, and then someone hurts himself against the camel, he'll be responsible because he was the one who caused the camel to trip, and he was supposed to watch where he was going. However, Rabbi Yehuda will say that in such a case, the owner is not responsible because the person does not need to watch where they're going, and even if he trips, it was a mistake and he will not be responsible. And this is the end of this lesson.